I once asked a financially independent friend to name the moments that mattered most in his journey. He didn't mention hitting $1 million or retiring early. Instead, he listed small milestones. The first time he tracked his spending for a full month, the day he opened his first investment account, the month his investment returns exceeded his rent. Those moments, he said, kept me going when the big goals felt too far away. Not every wealth milestone comes with applause, but some of the quietest ones change everything. When people talk about building wealth, what milestones usually come to mind? For most, it's the big ones. Your first million, financial independence, early retirement. These numbers dominate the conversation. They appear in books, podcasts, and social media posts. But here's the problem. Those big milestones often feel far away, almost abstract. And when a goal feels too distant, it can actually reduce motivation because it's hard to stay focused on something that feels decades away. What most people don't realise is that wealth is rarely built through one giant leap. It's built through a series of smaller milestones. Milestones that rarely get attention, but quietly change everything. Let's start with the first milestone, financial awareness. This is the moment when someone begins paying attention to their money. It may sound simple, but for many people, finances operate in the background. Paychecks arrive, bills get paid, expenses happen, but little thought goes into where money actually goes. Financial awareness changes that. It happens when someone starts tracking their income and spending. They begin noticing patterns, forgotten subscriptions, impulse purchases, expenses that add little value. This awareness alone can transform financial behaviour, because once you see where your money goes, you gain the ability to redirect it. For most people, this milestone is uncomfortable at first. Looking closely at spending often reveals leaks you'd rather ignore, but that discomfort is temporary. The clarity that follows, knowing exactly what's coming in and going out, replaces financial anxiety with a sense of control. You stop guessing and start knowing. And knowing is the foundation of every good financial decision. Now, let's talk about the second milestone, positive cash flow. Positive cash flow means spending less than you earn. It sounds obvious, but many people struggle to maintain this consistently. When expenses equal income, progress stops, savings stall, financial stress increases. But once someone consistently spends less than they earn, something powerful happens. Margin appears. Margin is the gap between income and spending, and that gap is where wealth begins. Without margin, wealth building cannot begin. Achieving positive cash flow often requires small, intentional changes. Cooking at home an extra night, cancelling unused subscriptions, delaying a non-essential purchase. None of these changes feel heroic, but together they create the breathing room that makes every future milestone possible. Now let's move to the third milestone, the emergency fund. An emergency fund usually represents 3 to 6 months of living expenses, and its purpose isn't to build wealth, it's to protect it. Life is unpredictable. Unexpected expenses appear constantly. Car repairs, medical bills, temporary job interruptions. Without savings, these events create financial crises. But with an emergency fund, the experience changes. Instead of panic, there's control. Instead of debt, there's stability. And that stability allows better financial decisions moving forward. I've seen people describe the feeling of having an emergency fund as a weight lifted. It's not just about the money. It's about knowing that you can handle what life throws at you. That psychological shift from vulnerability to resilience often marks the moment someone stops living paycheck to paycheck. Now let's talk about the fourth milestone, the first investment account. This is the moment when someone moves beyond saving and begins investing. Saving protects money, investing grows it. When someone invests for the first time, they begin participating in economic growth. Companies expand, innovation occurs, markets evolve, and investors benefit from that progress. At first, the investment account may be small, but psychologically, it represents something powerful. Your money is now working. The act of opening an investment account can feel intimidating. There's fear of making a mistake, fear of losing money. But the real mistake is waiting. The first investment doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to start. And once the account is open, the habit of contributing becomes routine. That routine is what eventually builds wealth. Now let's talk about the fifth milestone, your first $10,000 invested. This milestone is important because it represents momentum. Saving the first $10,000 requires discipline, consistency, and patience. But once someone reaches this level, confidence grows. They have proof that their financial habits work, and that proof motivates continued progress. For many, the first $10,000 feels like the hardest. It's where you learn to say no to small temptations, to stick with a plan when results aren't yet visible. But after crossing that threshold, the next $10,000 often comes faster. You've built the habit, now the habit is building you. Now we move to a milestone. Many people underestimate your first $100,000 invested. This milestone is often where compounding begins becoming visible. At smaller amounts, growth comes mostly from contributions. But once investments reach six figures, returns begin contributing significantly. For example, a $100,000 portfolio earning 8% annually generates about $8,000 per year. Suddenly, your money is producing meaningful growth without additional effort. This is where wealth building begins accelerating. The psychological shift at $100,000 is profound. Before, you felt like you were pushing the snowball uphill. After you start to feel the snowball rolling downhill on its own, you see your money working, and that sight changes how you think about every future contribution. You stop feeling like a saver and start feeling like an investor. Now let's talk about the next milestone, investment momentum. This occurs when your portfolio begins growing faster than your annual contributions. Your money starts doing more work than you do. At this stage, compounding becomes powerful. Returns generate additional returns, and financial progress accelerates dramatically. This is often the stage where people begin seeing real wealth accumulation. Imagine investing $1,000 a month. In the early years, contributions drive most of the growth, but once your portfolio is large enough, a single year's market return might exceed your entire annual contribution. That's investment momentum. It's the point where your money becomes a second income stream, one that requires no labor. Now let's talk about the final milestone, financial independence momentum. This is when investment returns begin covering a meaningful portion of your living expenses. For example, imagine someone with a $750,000 portfolio earning an average annual return of 4%. That portfolio could produce about $30,000 per year. If their annual living expenses are $60,000, their investments now cover half their lifestyle. This changes everything because work becomes optional rather than mandatory, financial decisions become flexible, and stress decreases significantly. At this stage, you no longer need to earn a high salary to maintain your lifestyle. You can take a job you love even if it pays less. You can step away from work for a period to travel or start a business. The financial pressure that once dominated your life begins to fade. And this momentum only grows as your portfolio continues to compound. But here's the key insight. None of these milestones happen overnight. They happen through consistent actions, repeated for many years. Saving regularly, investing patiently, avoiding unnecessary debt, allowing compounding to work. Wealth is rarely dramatic. It grows quietly, almost invisibly. And that's why recognizing smaller milestones is important. Each milestone represents progress, builds confidence, reinforces good financial habits, because motivation increases when progress becomes visible. Instead of focusing only on distant goals like $1 million, celebrate the steps along the way. Your first emergency fund, your first investment account, your first $10,000 invested, your first $100,000 portfolio. Each step moves you closer to financial independence, and each step proves that wealth building is possible, not through sudden breakthroughs, but through consistent actions repeated over time. Small decisions, small improvements, small milestones, working together to produce something remarkable. financial freedom. And the journey toward that freedom begins long before the big numbers appear. It begins with the milestones nobody talks about, but that quietly shape your financial future. If you're just starting out, don't be discouraged by how far the big milestones seem. Focus on the next small milestone. Track your spending for a month. Build a $1,000 emergency fund. Open an investment account. Each of these steps is a victory. And over time, those victories accumulate. They become the foundation of a life where money is no longer a source of stress, but a source of options. That's the real wealth, and it's built one quiet milestone at a time.